I'm Al McFarland. Welcome to the conversation with Al McFarland. I'm glad to be here, and continuing what I hope to be regular coverage, checking in on the situations here in Minnesota and around the country, protests associated with the killing of Renee Nicole Good at the hands of an ICE officer. All that part of the surge. ICE officials sent by the administration, theoretically, at least they say, to round up killers and um, drug dealers and rapists who have invaded the country, who happen to be from places like, according to our administration, the Latin countries and other countries, people that are here illegal. And the question is, how uh, much abuse of the rights and dignity of all human beings and also American citizens will we experience? And that seems to be the problem. So I want to do a couple of things. One is first welcome my friend Corey Day, who's a commentator and organizer in the political arena here in Minnesota, just to chat with me. And I also want to invite any of you listening to join this conversation. It's just that, a conversation, us sort of checking in with each other, challenging each other, sharing information, attitudes, points of view. And we want you to do that as well. So I put a QR code at the top of the screen. You want to get on the call, just click on that. We'll see you and we'll invite you in. And if you want to just join by commenting in the chat, that would be awesome as well. We had a very vibrant, on fire chat last week. So I'm hoping that people will be as motivated and excited today to weigh in, to bring their voices into the conversation. I'm Al McFarland. I'm the editor and owner of Insight News here in Minneapolis and host here for the conversation with Al McFarland, and happy to be able to bring this platform to the service of our community and to the service of our vision of what we can and should be for each other, for our families, for the future. Corey, how you doing, man?
I'm good, Al. I'm good in these trying times in the community, but I'm doing well and just trying to make sure to keep my head above water.
I'm overwhelmed, frankly. I'm tied to the television, tied to my digital platforms, and trying to learn and and I'm writing stories too, so I have to be there, but it's really overwhelming. What are you thinking? Are people hearing more people like that? How do people navigate through this, and is there a way through it?
Well, you know what? I mean, I've been very proud of our community here in Minnesota. I think the way our folks have stood up for our neighbors has been something that folks around the country have been watching and understand that there's a Minnesota way. And the Minnesota way is by not just closing the door on our brothers and sisters who are going through struggles and troubles. And I think one of the things that's really just capturing me right now is not, I mean, this being the epicenter of kind of what Trump represents. But as we watch Greenland and as we watch all of these things that are going on nationally, we're watching these terrible pardons that the president continuously gives. It's weird when we throw away all of our norms and those norms are being thrown away and accepted. That folks are just accepting the fact that, this is the new norm, what Donald Trump's doing. And the fact that we're looking at armed ICE agents in a American city asking for your papers. We have the head of ICE walking around looking like a Nazi, an SS general. And this is acceptable. And this is something where when you watch the national news and you watch folks who are on the other side, the fact that they're not calling this out, the fact that the U.S. Senate is allowing these things to go on, I really think we're going to see a reckoning in the years to come. And folks are going to look back and wondering, what the heck were we thinking?
I had a brother, Professor Walter Grayson, is a historian over at McAllister College on yesterday, along with your friend and mine, I think Haley Taylor Schlitz, young, brilliant lawyer, former assistant attorney general, now in private practice. And the three of us sort of chopped it up yesterday talking about what this means. And I'm remembering Walter Gray's comment that historian, this reminds him of the days before the Civil War. And it
Mm,
also reminded him of the period where Reconstruction after the Civil War uh, faded away, and supremacist ideology,
yes.
Southern uh, reclamation of their position of power that they felt they lost in the war began to emerge again in the form of Jim Crow. And he's saying this is kind of like that. It's also kind of like World War II, where things are lining up, where sides are being formed that are nebulous right now, but the beginnings are beginning to be apparent. And so that's kind of an is it ominous outlook that
Mm,
we may be at the precipice of something that could go terribly, terribly wrong. But I think in that, one has to always say and believe we also may be at the place where the terribly wrong reveals itself in a way that allows decency to emerge, truth to win, democracy to prevail. Uh,
mm.
are you feeling any of that energy? What do you think?
You
I mean,
know,
there's
I,
that
I,
big
I,
picture
I,
here,
I mean, I
a
think that as
long
well,
list.
and I'm hoping to get to that. I'm hoping to get to that point. I think right now, we're just, as I think we're only 1 year into Trump's 4 year term, and this is as much this kind of damage we're seeing within the first year. Um, I think we're looking at such blatant racism, sexism. I'm at this place right now where I'm still blown away that Stephen Miller, Trump's deputy chief of staff, can go on national TV and say the things that he says. Talk about the other countries. Talk about immigrants in this country, folks who are Americans when it really comes down to it, because they're nationalized citizens. So I think I'm really trying to get to that place where I can actually look at this country and not be blown away that 50% of this country shakes their head yes when they hear Donald Trump talking on TV. Uh, I'm trying to get, and I'm working through it, Al, I really am, but it still just blows me away that folks can hear what is being said, see what is being done with their own eyes.
Mhm.
When Trump says there's no affordability problem, and folks are actually convincing themselves there's not. These are the things that I'm blown away by. I'm blown away by the fact that this country, the way we were founded, with states' rights and freedoms, that they think it's okay for 2,000 ICE agents to roam the streets with masks on, not asking for warrants and dragging people off the street. I just, I'm still getting my head around that, and I refuse to let that become the new norm as I kind of view our country and our city. I'm trying to get there, where I try to see the light, through the tunnel and past the darkness.
So, a lot of my friends and a lot of the people who are African American, we're citizens, we say, there's no way we can be deported, right? And they say we feel for the people that are at risk of deportation, that we kind of, are identifiable and distinct, and we're native at this point. And I push back a little bit, Corey. I say, you know what? If you were imported, you could be deported.
Mhm.
And that's a bottom line that we don't want to look at. So the same animus that brought us here 400 years ago as imports for a specific purpose and not held and viewed as human, and then begrudgingly assigned a value for the power dynamic in the creation of a new country uh, beyond the Constitution. So a society that could do that, could think that, operate with that in fact did import
Mhm.
uh, those of us who are, we're the descendants of the imported ones. Why couldn't they? Why can't I imagine them figuring out the same logic, language, impulse to deport? And,
Yep.
and and I have to always look at what happened with the indigenous people here. their decimation, and we don't really want to. We want to figure out how to look at it in a benign way and say that was like nature and natural and just transitions. But no, it was murder, and it was theft,
Yeah.
and it was annihilation, it was genocide. And so the people that are capable of genocide, that capacity doesn't leave. So I'm sort of looking sort of at the worst side of this, though I hold hope and belief that we will prevail. I'm not believing that things won't get a lot worse than they are now this year immediately, and that if we don't mobilize and organize, they'll get really worse. And I think that the government and the Trump apparatus, his movement, is one to keep pushing until he gets stopped. And his thing is, if you don't stop me, it must be okay. And so therefore I can invade Venezuela. Therefore I can actually, and so one of the things yesterday, Walter said, because I raised a question about the news releases saying that the Trump has mobilized or threatened to mobilize or put at the ready Alaska National Guard or Alaska Army Reserves. And so I said,
Texas. Yeah.
huh?
Texas Reserves. Yeah.
Who?
They put the Texas Army Reserve on notice.
Texas, but Alaska as well. So why Alaska, right? Of course, cold in Minnesota. They can handle it. Texas might not.
Yeah.
Of course they can. That's kind of a joke. But then he said, well, this might simply be a staging and a practice for Greenland. Hadn't thought about that. If you have an internal play act where you set up something, and it might be staging sort of a way to have people ready to do something in Greenland if that emerges. But the thought of that is unnerving. So what are your thoughts? Let me ask people and thank people who are joining us in the chat. If you want to get in the conversation, we want you in the conversation. We're going to share some of your comments, and you don't have to agree with me or Corey. You can be completely opposite, and we respect your point of view. So, don't feel like if you're not preaching to the choir, you're not welcome. You are welcome. Sherry says how to handle ICE. Stay away, don't obstruct. Maybe Waltz and Frey should turn the criminals in custody over to ICE and avoid the street arrest in the first place. I'm not sure what that means. But
I think she wants just go ahead and turn the criminals in and hope that ICE will go away. One of the things, Al, that kind of alludes to what you said earlier is that when you looked at Jim Crow and you looked at Reconstruction and you looked at that period of World War II, all of those were times that we're going through tumultuous periods, conflict, things were going on in this country that were producing major change.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing this when the dollar was at its strongest. We're doing this when, our middle class was starting to grow. We're doing this when America was still the pillar of the world. We are doing these things. We're taking these actions, not because of some conflict, not because of some reaction to something. We're doing them proactively. This president is doing these things proactively. He's proactively going after NATO. He's proactively blowing up boats in Venezuela. These actions were something that had no reason or rhyme to be taking place. This president has chosen this. And this is one of those things that we should be very fearful of right now, is that these are things that, when populations are in conflict or they're scared, they do stupid things. Mm-hmm. This country is not in conflict. This country was not scared. And this country is sitting back and accepting the things this president's doing without questioning him. We have a United States Senate that doesn't even exist. We have a House. They might as well check out and go home, because they're not checks, and there's no checks and balances going on right now. And this is not a time of war and conflict. This is a time of peace and prosperity. And we're seeing this president do all he can to bring this country down and do what he can to make it as uncomfortable for people who look like you and I all over this country.
To what end? I mean, to me, the end is to fleece the country, mm-hmm. To fleece the treasury, and to line up a system of a permanent, or as long as possible, control of the wealth, not only of the country, but of the world. And to figure out I heard him this morning in a interview talking about how he had great relationships with the president of China and great relationships with the president of Russia. And so I'm imagining from what he said that he's, if he sees the world in a tripartite fashion, three powers on the globe, China, Russia, and the US, then let the party begin and let the rest of the world eat cake, as they say, let them suffer.
Oh, he could care less. Look, this president cares about one thing, and that's enriching his family and his friends.
Uh-huh.
I mean, you see today he tried to talk about this new Department of Peace or peace organization. He's trying to replace the UN. And if you look at the charter that they put forth, he's the permanent president of this chartered organization that he's trying to put forth. Who does these things? I mean, and you know what? And like I said, I'm trying these days to not just be overly partisan, but of course we all are a bit here. Shame on the Republicans for allowing this to happen. Do you remember when they were ready to throw Barack Obama out of the White House wearing a tan suit?
Yeah.
This man has accepted a plane from a foreign country, has knocked down the East Wing. They've said nothing. This man literally this week has released another drug dealer on a pardon after this person's family gave $2 million to his super PAC. Do you hear anything? It's deafening how silent folks have been with some of the things that this president has been doing. And it's all connected, from ICE being on our streets to blowing up those boats, to this Greenland nonsense he's talking, to calling these, to keeping folks out of this country from brown and black countries. It's all connected.
Drought Tolerant 9334, thanks for your comment. Say more, and also Sherry Matukonis 6016, thank you for your comments. Say more. We'd love to have you. If you want to get in on screen with us, just hit the QR code and we'll bring you in for your thoughts. But keep posting. Let's get the chat going. Let me, Corey, talk about something that we mentioned. We may be on different sides of this, and if we are, that's okay. I got a story that'll be posted at insightnews.com later today, and it'll be a lead story in Insight News, this Monday edition. The 26th, I think, is Monday, but that hits the street on Friday. So the story is entitled Protest, Pulpit, and Power, Faith Leaders and Activists Challenge ICE Pastor at City's Church. So let me just read parts of it and we'll come back into it, go in and out of it. The sanctuary of City's Church on Summit Avenue is usually a place of quiet worship, but on the Sunday before Martin Luther King Jr. Day, the calm fractured. ICE out, justice for Renee Good. Chants echoed through the church as protesters stood, hands raised, interrupting the service to confront what they called irreconcilable moral contradiction. That a senior federal immigration enforcement official also serves as a pastor. Within hours, the protest, live streamed by Black Lives Matter Minnesota, drew national attention. By Sunday night, the U.S. Department of Justice announced it was investigating the demonstrators who disrupted worship at the St. Paul Church. At the center of the controversy is David Easterwood, listed on the church's website as a pastor and identified in court filings as the acting director of U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement's St. Paul Field Office. Minnesota Public Radio reported that Eastwood's personal information matches that of the ICE official, who also appeared alongside Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem at a Minneapolis press conference last fall. For organizers, the issue was not protest for protest's sake. It was theology, accountability, and life and death consequences. Open quote, "This is not an insurrection," said Monique Coolers-Doty, co-founder of Black Lives Matter Minnesota. "This was a correction." At a January 20th press conference at the Hennepin County Government Center, clergy, activists, and community leaders defended their actions and demanded Eastwood's resignation from the church. Leading the event was Nekima Levy Armstrong, an ordained reverend, a civil rights attorney, and a longtime Minneapolis activist. She said, open quote, "I am an ordained reverend. Let me repeat that again, an ordained reverend, and my faith informs my activism." Armstrong said demonstrations at City's Church. The demonstration at City's Church was intentionally held on the Sunday before the MLK holiday to honor not just King's words, but his actions. Our society commemorates Dr. King, she said, but most of the time we do not repeat his actions, which had to do with disrupting the status quo and calling out our government. Armstrong said she and other organizers have since received threats. One person emailed me and said, "Renee Good deserved what she got, and you would have gotten the same." And she read that message saying that's what we're dealing with. So let me stop there and just get your feedback. So for context, if you haven't been following, obviously, Renee Good was killed by an ICE agent, 2 weeks ago now, almost, when she was part of a group that was observing ICE actions in South Minneapolis. I think it was on about 34th and Portland or so, where videos show her car appeared to be blocking traffic, and some cars went around her, but some officers came to her asking her to get out of her car or to move her car. She tried to move it, and everybody could sort of see what happened. In the matter of seconds, 3 bullets were fired. She's dead. So that's the context. The question is, how is the community reacting to the activists taking this challenge and protest to the seat of moral authority that is the church? What do you think? Was it a good idea or a bad idea?
Look, I've been very much in favor and proud of Minnesotans and their protests to ICE actions. Obviously, their protests to that murder. I think the actions they've taken have been just and right. To be out on those streets and making sure that their voices are being heard, and really making sure that the rest of the world understands what happened out here was murder. In regards to the church action, I respect that Nakima's ordained minister, but as a God-fearing Christian myself, I just do not believe in disrupting folks while they are practicing their faith. I understand the thought process for the action. I understand wanting to make a point with the pastor, but I'm just not gonna ever just believe that it's rightful to go into the house of God with kind of a advocacy protest action. And I know a lot of folks who are there. I'm friends with folks who took in it, and I know they have their opinions. But I believe that we have to stand up and be strong. I think we have to continue to make sure our voices are being heard. But I also think there are certain lines I personally would not always support stepping over.
So let me throw it out to the people on the chat. Let me know what you think. Was it too far? Was it the right thing to do? Should more be done? And I don't have a problem personally with the action in the church. I think the church is an appropriate place, and that kind of shows up in the article. Let me read a little bit more of it, Corey, and let's see if some of the people, drought tolerant, you or others who are on the chat have a comment. We'd love to have your comments, pro or con, what your take is on this. Armstrong says, someone help me understand how it's possible to hold both roles with integrity. Because the gospel I believe in says we are to love our neighbors as we love ourselves. Armstrong and others described ICE operations in Minnesota as violent and terrorizing, citing multiple incidents involving immigrant families. She referenced the killing of Renee Good, a mother and wife whose death at the hands of ICE officers has become a rallying cry for activists. Federal officials initially described Good as a domestic terrorist, a claim her family and supporters strongly dispute. They had guns Armstrong said, quoting Good's wife, "We had whistles." She also described ICE raids in which agents allegedly dragged people from their homes in freezing temperatures, including the Hmong elder brought outside partially clothed, and a Liberian immigrant detained in North Minneapolis. These are military-grade weapons being unleashed on our communities, Armstrong said. And instead of addressing that, the federal government threatens to investigate peaceful protesters. Coolers Doty was blunt in her assessment of Easterwood's pastoral role. You cannot stand within four walls and call yourself a church if you are not preaching, teaching, living, and walking the gospel, she said. It's an abomination for someone to place the title of Reverend before their name while acting as a field director of ICE. Well, that's a stretch for me too. She says there's nothing in the Bible that supports what ICE is doing. It's sinful at best. Let me know what you think about that. I am a veteran. I served in the military and placed myself and my life in the service of the country, sometimes with a lot of doubt and sometimes protesting the actions of our country, but nonetheless feeling a duty to serve the country as a 19, 20-year-old back in the Vietnam War era days. I wasn't in Vietnam. I was on a ship based on the East Coast, and so never personally in danger, but the principles. And so, when I hear and read the analysis about whether a person can be in law enforcement and be in the pulpit, I think that contradiction is not really much of a contradiction, because everybody, even those in the military, you can't condemn people whose career and whose idea of serving the country is to be elected or to be hired in the sheriff's department, the police department, the National Guard, or the Army, or the military. Those are all means of serving community, and in theory, they're ways to serve and support the health of a community. So I'm ambivalent, I guess, about that. I don't quite agree, but I understand the sentiment and I understand the logic of them weighing and trying to create an equation of the notion of Jesus, the Savior himself, walking into the temple, the church, and turning over the tables because he thought that what was going on was an abomination. What do you think? Those in the chat, give me your thoughts. Love to hear your comments. Join the conversation. Corey, any more thoughts about it? A couple other things I want to share too as well. Any more thoughts about the religious and faith community's responsibility?
Yeah, I think it was very well said out. What you said really kind of hit the point. That I do think obviously the faith community has a responsibility to be stewards of the word. But I say this, I don't know if it was Nakeem and that group's determination to tell them what the word is supposed to be and what it should be. I say that out of all respect, but there's just a part of me, there's an element of me that I feel like, it's no one's place to tell another how they're supposed to worship, and how they're supposed to see their worship. And I just feel like going into the church the way they did that, kind of performative, I don't think it helped the movement we're in right now. I don't think it helped the fight we're in right now. There's a part of me that it gave the other side a little fodder to hold on to. And I think right now, unfortunately, some of these things that when it comes to this fight, to this movement, to try to get these folks off of our streets, you have to be very strategic. And you have to just realize every move has to be a chess move, and we can't give the other side any red meat on some of this stuff.
So here's another story that will be posted today at insightnews.com and in the paper next week. The headline is says Ellison, quoting him saying that law was written to stop terror, not truth. And so I'll just share a few paragraphs. It says what began as a discussion about church protests quickly escalated into a blunt indictment of power, protest, and free speech when Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison joined journalist Don Lemon and comedian D.L. Hughley for a wide-ranging conversation on the First Amendment. This country was started with a protest, Ellison said. Protest is fundamental to American society. None of us are immune from the voice of the public. Lemon framed the controversy by pointing out what he described as a glaring contradiction. Lemon said, they're upset about protests in a church, but this is the same administration that tried to get courts to allow them to arrest migrants in church. They wanted to arrest them in church. Ellison responded, they're getting real tender about church service now, but they've arrested people in clinics, in schools, in churches, anywhere they chose. Sacred places only matter when it works in their favor. Ellison examined the original purpose of the Ku Klux Klan Act, which U.S. Department of Justice is saying it might use in charging Lemon for his role in reporting on the protests that interrupted the Sunday service at the Cities Church, Twin Cities Church in St. Paul. Ellison said that law was passed to protect African Americans who were literally being terrorized, murdered, and killed. They had just emerged from bondage and servitude. This is following slavery. And the Reconstruction Congress said the federal government would not allow the Klan to attack Black people for asserting their rights. He warned that invoking that law today against journalists or protesters represents a dangerous inversion. Think about the perversion of the federal government saying, we're going to use this act to punish people who are reporting facts. That's the opposite of what it was designed to do. Lemon said, I was not there as an activist. I was simply chronicling what they were doing. That is what journalists do all the time. So that's kind of a big part of the story, which made it really national. And that is that, Donald Trump's administration is saying it's going to use the Klan Act and another act to charge the protesters, but specifically naming Don Lemon as a journalist. So that's having a chilling effect on journalism everywhere. What do you think, Corey?
I mean, this administration right now are currently going after both mayors, our governor. I think they have a pretty wide net of who they're going after. I think they're, journalists. I don't think there's any kind of a limit to who they want to give subpoenas to or try to charge. To them, that is just a tool in their box to use against anyone who has a voice in this movement, in this fight, in this country right now. I mean, as we speak, we're seeing them go after the Fed. I'm just trying to think of all the people right now who are under some kind of suspicion or indictment or subpoena. So, it's one of those deals that, Don Lemon is out here reporting, and, realistically, the second you peacock or you become a loud voice, then you become a target. And that's going to continuously happen in this administration. Unfortunately, that's going to continuously happen for the next 3 years of Donald Trump's term. At any time that you're a voice of any kind of resistance, you're going to be a target.
Okay. Well,
I think it's terrible. I think Don Lemon is here reporting. Don Lemon is part of the independent media. He has all right to be where he needs to be to report the story and tell the story as he sees it. I think it's obviously. I mean, it's one of those things that it's despicable. I mean, it's despicable when I think about the idea that they delivered a subpoena to the new mayor of St. Paul, Her's office. I mean, it's one of those things that there is no limit or a line that this administration sees when it comes to trying to silence any of its critics.
One of the bright spots, I think there is a resistance. I think that despite the massive bully pulpit that the administration has and the tools it has to attempt to rein its will over the voices of the people. Despite that, there are voices rising. So Ilhan Omar and her colleague, I think let me say the name the right way, Pramila Jayapal from Washington, who's ranking member of the Subcommittee on Immigration, Integrity, Security, and Enforcement, last week hosted a shadow hearing titled Kidnapped and Disappeared, Trump's Deadly Assault on Minnesota. And this was cool because 27 members of Congress attended. They came from across the country to conduct this oversight hearing. I was honored to host this crucial hearing with Representative Jayapal, said Omar. The Twin Cities is under attack from the Trump administration. There is no modern precedent for the level of federal overreach, violence, and lawlessness carried out in the name of immigration enforcement. I'm grateful to my congressional colleagues from all across the country who joined us to raise the alarm and learn what has been happening on the ground. So this was the sixth in a series of hearings in the Kidnapped and Disappeared. It's a congressional fact-finding mission. The Minnesota hearing examined the intense trauma and terror for Minnesotans who are being subjected to the lawlessness and violence of ICE and Border Patrol agents, said Jayapal. We heard from incredibly powerful witnesses, members of the community who are standing up for their neighbors and even who have been detained and have their rights violated for no reason. Instead of making us safer, Trump is deliberately escalating tensions in a city where crime rates have been declining, and the tactics are only accelerating. Let me be clear, she said. This pattern of reckless and even lethal use of force cannot continue, and we will do everything in our power to hold the administration accountable and stop the lawlessness. So again, a number of people testified. They included Representative Betty McCollum. I think Keith Ellison testified as well. The testimony included that from Mayor Jacob Fry and St. Paul Mayor Carly Herr, Executive Director of the ACLU, Dipender Mayel, and Executive Director of Unidos Minnesota, Emilia Avalos, and Executive Director of Minnesota Chapter of the Council on American Islamic Relations, we call it CARE, Jelani Hussein, and a police chief, Kelly McCarthy from Mendota Heights, other people as well. So I was impressed. I was kind of glued to the station watching that hearing live. I think that that's more of that is needed, and I applaud those legislators for taking this show on the road, attempting to explain the process. Well, these are Democrats, and you are an important player in the democratic process in Minnesota and in the country. What's the mindset? What's the philosophy? What's the intent? And what are the potential outcomes desired from holding hearings like this? Why is this hearing just Democrats? And what does it really mean from the lens of the overall governance apparatus from the legislature? It's a subcommittee, it's Democrats, no Republicans. What does it really mean?
You know what, I think Democratic activists and folks throughout the country, they're ready to fight. They're ready to push back. I think what we're trying to figure out, I think, for the first part of this Trump presidency is what should we do? You know, half of the Democrats didn't know if they wanted to just keep quiet and hope that he would just burn himself out. And you had the folks who wanted to go on, give speeches and want to talk and wanted to push back. And then you have the entire argument about, the government shutdown. I think the one thing that folks from LA to New York to Chicago to Miami to Minneapolis wants to see, they want to see our elected officials step up, start giving voice to it. Right now Democrats have no power in Washington, D.C. And there's no way to kind of spin that. They have no control over either body. They don't have the administration. They don't have the Supreme Court. They have absolutely no power. Their power is their voice. Their power is that we need to be in a position right now where every opportunity we get pushed back. There's going to be a whole nother government shutdown discussion that's going to be taking place at the end of the month again. We've got to make it hard. We cannot just lay down and hope for good governance all the time. At some point, we have to fight. So when I see Representative Omar get out there and I see her colleagues start pushing back, I was so happy to see those folks flying to Minnesota in our 5-degree weather to come in and hold that hearing. That is what we have to do. So when it comes from the DNC to Congresswoman McCollum to Senator Klobuchar to Governor Walz, they cannot lay down. They have to be loud voices, a constant drum beat, letting folks know that they are with them, they are part of this fight. Well, Mayor Frey, we have to stay in this, and there's no way of staying in the fight with silence. So if it means you're going to hold hearings, if it means you have to show up at an ICE detention center, if it means that you have to march, if that's the power that you have, then use that power. Now, obviously, because we sure don't get any power when it comes to DC at this point. So let's take the power we have and make sure that we're using it now. And I'm telling you right now, the folks who are doing this, the folks who are being vocal, who are being leaders, are the folks who are going to be rewarded when the midterms come. Those are the folks who will be rewarded at the ballot. And the ones who want to lead this country in 2028, this is their time to be a loud and outspoken voice, not just for the Democratic Party, but for this country. And I think what you're going to see is folks are going to be watching and waiting to see leadership percolate to the top, and they're going to be rewarded for fighting this fight right now, because we can't do it alone.
So my wife and I sit and talk, and we'll say to each other, man, when are they going to do something? When is somebody going to do something, right? And I think that we're being really ordinary citizens. Like, ordinary people feel like, even if because we totally disagree with the administration's moves, but there's a sense of, why can't responsible people, principled people, why can't the Democrats do something now? And you said it, but let me put the question to you again. You can say it again. Why can't the Democrats do something now? Or what can the Democrats do now? Is it only posturing? Is it only organizing? Is it only education? What's the limit of their ability to respond right now?
Well, the thing we're going to see in short order, when the government's going to have to be funded again. And what you're going to see right now, and you're already seeing Democrats starting to have the conversation, and we're going to see what kind of appetite they have for this fight, is that they're going to try not to fund the Department of Homeland Security. And this is going to be
what kind of power do they have to not fund Homeland Security? I mean, what are the numbers required to block funding? How does it work?
In the Senate, there's so many, they have to get to 60. So you have to have, like what happened before, you had 6 Democrats cross the line and join the Republicans and reopen the government. So what needs to happen is that we have to stand strong, stand firm, and have a strategy that we make sure that we actually are able to garner some victories, some concessions in this next fight. And I know the one discussion I know that's going to be taking place is Homeland Security, who funds ICE. Now, one of the challenges we're going to have is that ICE got so much money during Trump's so-called beautiful bill that you can stop funding them and it'll be good for the next 2 years. Because
how many billions was it?
I believe their budget went from, I almost want to say, from like $8 billion to $30 billion, something along those lines. That kind of increase happened. But regardless, this is our time where we actually have some power in DC is going to be when it comes to funding the government. And now, obviously, when that happened last time, you had folks who didn't get paychecks, and Trump. Who
were the 6 Democrats that crossed over in the Senate last time?
Oh gosh, honestly, you know what?
Where are they going? What happens to them in January? Are they say they were vindicated? On the one hand, they could say they helped people keep their paychecks and they could say they did the right thing.
Yeah.
On the other hand, the bigger picture is disastrous.
Some of them, the rhyme and reason was, I remember one was, I can't remember the exact member, but from Virginia. So, a lot of his constituents were government employees and wanted them to go back to work. Obviously, Trump was starting to threaten all the SNAP benefits and cutting those off. So there was going to be some pain that was going to be taking place, and these members crossed the line. So the question we're going to have this time around is, what is going to be the Democratic strategy? how are they going to find a way to make sure that if they're going to keep the government funded, what kind of concessions do we get out of it, and what makes the most sense as we're going into a midterm? So that's one of the tools they have that you're going to see, and you're going to see this discussion come within the next month or so. But there isn't a lot. I got to be honest with you. When you don't have any committee control, you don't control the agenda of what comes up in the House. You see the House of Representatives, I mean, they haven't done nothing. I mean, they have been inept. They've barely been in session. So, and most of these folks have just made it very clear going into a midterm that their biggest fear is not getting Donald Trump's endorsement. And so they've done everything to kowtow to Donald Trump and do what he said. So you haven't seen any pushback at all or any oversight from any from Congress whatsoever. So yes, I think our folks still need to constantly push back, and I think we need to make sure that we're vocal. And I think when there's any opportunity that we can have those kind of hearings, we need to have them. We need to constantly remind the American public whose fault this is, who's causing this. And also start, obviously offering them solutions, but we cannot just be quiet doves. We have to be squeaky wheels from now to November. And we have to make sure that when this fight comes for keeping the government open, that we don't just become shrinking violets, but we actually make sure that we get in the fight.
And so this idea of shrinking the government is not a new one. In fact, that kind of has been the rallying cry for the tax party and the MAGA Republicans, the ultra conservatives, always wanted to reduce government, right? But they're reducing the parts of government that don't serve them and building up the parts of government that serve them. And so it's kind of diabolical, I think. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they're getting, the Department of Education and, getting rid of USAID. They are going after those elements that they believe hurts Democrats. So let's be honest here. I mean, look at what they're doing right now. They're talking about cutting benefits to only blue states. I mean, are you the president for all the citizens or just for those who voted for you? The fact that they target states because that they are blue states who are Democratic states is unbelievable. And the funny thing that's happening with this and what happened with those SNAP benefits is that the reality is Donald Trump's hurting his own voters, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the reality is most of those benefits are in rural white communities around the country. And as they sit here and try their best to go after those, the LAs and New Yorks and Chicagos of the world, with some of these thinking that these targeted kind of cuts are going to hurt those, they're hurting their own voters. And you're going to see right now in an election year, if your Senate seat's up and you're up in the House of Representatives and you're in a marginal, you're in a purple seat, you're going to have to make some real decisions about, are you going to just follow Trump and his terrible policies right off the ledge, or are you going to try to protect your seat and actually realize that, folks want to actually get their benefits. Folks actually don't want to just see that we give tax cuts to the 1% and ignore the rest of the folks around. I think you're going to see Republicans have to make some real choices, and on healthcare, because like they said, the premiums are going to go through the roof, and this is going to hurt not just blue states, but this is going to hurt millions of Americans when they start seeing their premiums go up by 30 and 40%.
So where does real change take place? Do you think that the progressive liberal strategy of a certain kind of balance and openness to both sides is going to prevail at some point in time, reemerge, or will that entire scenario of the past 100 years be scrapped to either go deep right or deep left being ultra progressive, sort of a new writing of what it means to be, a country and a community in the world? Where do you see this going? What do I mean by that? Like the big tent Democratic Party, is it still viable, or will it simply grow and grow differently? What do you think?
You know what? I mean, it's a really good question. I mean, I'm of the belief thinking that just common sense is going to take back over. And I think that, being a Big Ten, and I do believe Big Ten is the right way. Now, when I say Big Ten, I mean that we become a party that's tolerant of folks who are on the far left, but who are centrist. We're not trying to throw people out of the tent, but we're just trying to increase the size of the tent. So I really do believe that what this Trump, mess is going to really bring forth is that there are moderate Democrats, there's moderate Republicans, there's folks on the left, but there are just common goods that we all believe in as Americans, and that's how it used to exist. And I think one of the things that we saw with Trump is Trump decided to test the norms and do things that we didn't have rules in place because we never thought anyone would do these kind of things. And when you don't have a Congress that's going to be any kind of backstop or have any kind of backbone, you see what happens to America. So my hope is that we obviously find strong, real leadership, and we understand that this is not about excluding, but including. And if we do that, then we can try to get this country back in line. And that's what the Democratic Party is going to have to do in order to make sure that we're winning back those troughs of voters that we lost because we did go too far to one side. And that is not the Democratic Party we have been. That's not the Democratic Party that wins presidential elections and has controlled the Senate and the House in the past.
So what's your prediction for November? What do you think is going to happen?
I think
Minnesota first and then nationally.
Okay. Yeah. So in Minnesota, I am very confident that we'll get a very strong gubernatorial candidate who's going to be able to win that race for us.
You think it'll be Amy?
I'm sure that the Klobuchar team is looking at this and they're measuring it. If it makes sense for the senator to get in this race. And we do know if she does get in this race, she's the most popular politician in the state on both sides of the aisle. She's constantly gets around 60% of the state. And I would think that if she gets in, you'll see a lot of Republicans get out of the way. So I do have a lot of faith that if Senator Klobuchar is our candidate, she will be the next governor of this state. I think in a Senate race between Peggy Flanagan and Angie Craig, we have two candidates that are extremely strong, who represent maybe different sides of kind of the Democratic spectrum. But I do think either one of them who gets through in September can win and hold that Senate seat, which we haven't, we've held those Senate seats for a long time now. I think our good friend.
And if that happened, would the other one of the two be the right replacement for Amy?
I don't know. I think, look, the senator is a very thoughtful person. I think, she's going to really take a step back and be, whoever you usually appoint in that seat is, will be running for this seat most likely. It won't be just a caretaker. And knowing just how strategic she is, I think she'll make a smart decision. In my opinion, do I think she'll choose the one who doesn't win? No. I don't think that's kind of where her mind will be on that.
Okay.
But I think Keith is going to have a tough race, and Keith's used to tough races. So, we'll all be behind and fighting for Keith as hard as we can. And I feel good about Steve Simon. So I think Minnesota, we're going to have some challenges, but I think we're in a good place. I think the real battle is obviously going to make sure that we win the U.S. House, which I think, Trump's redistricting plan is falling apart because we've been able to counter it. I think right now you're looking at the polling, at the numbers. Trump's got lower numbers than Biden and Obama did at this time. Some of the lowest numbers we've seen in the last 20 years as a president at this time of their tenure. I do believe with him not on the ballot, that will hurt those candidates. I think we won the House. And the funny thing is, I think we're going to put the Senate in and put it in play. I think with what's going on in Alaska, we got a great new candidate there who just jumped in the race. I think Sherrod Brown in Ohio. I think we, now granted, it's threading the needle, but I do think that we can be competitive in the Senate. So I think these actions that we're seeing right now that the Republicans are taking they're going to be punished in the ballot box in November. And I do think that we're going to see Democrats at least be able to split government and actually start trying to pull back on some of these terrible things that this administration and this president's been doing.
What are the risks between now and November? Is it paranoia to wonder whether the scuttlebutt we hear about Trump not wanting to leave office and organizing to invalidate or to rig or whatever? Is that something that we should be concerned about, or do we think our system is strong enough and that as a people, we're alert enough to prevent any effort to derail, our systems and our processes and institutions. What do you think?
I think
They're a real threat.
I do think. I mean, I do. Yeah, there was a time that I always thought we were strong enough, and no one would believe half of the BS that gets put out. But after what Trump has done and the mistrust he's created in the systems that he's in control of, go figure. I'm always very hesitant when it comes to. We know, regardless of what happens in November, they're going to call foul. I mean, we know that. We know that the one thing that Republicans are going to do, and is part of now, it's their number one, play in their playbook, is they're going to call fraud, cheating, all the things that they've been doing that seems to more or less work for them in the context of creating a mistrust of our system. And I think Trump has done such unfortunately, a good job of creating that mistrust that I think every election for kind of the foreseeable future is going to be called in question, because it doesn't matter what happens. As long as anytime they don't win, we cheated. And so that's something we have to really be on the lookout for. Do I think Trump's going to try to run for another term and stick around? No, I think Trump's getting up there in age, and I think, when his time comes, his time is going to come. But we do have to figure out the fact that calling foul is now just a play in the playbook in order to try to make these elections not look like they're, above board. And that's what they're going to be doing I imagine, for the next few years to come.
Corey, let's close focusing again on the ICE crisis here in Minnesota. Is there a doomsday scenario in your mind? What's the worst that could happen? I have one, and I don't want to say it because I don't want to speak it into existence. But the general direction, what's the bad side? Let me say mine. Mine a little is
okay. Yeah.
My little fear is that somebody's going to just feel so pressurized that somebody, one or two things. A person that sees himself as normal, but feels like the government is really oppressing, does something crazy, and the crazy that they do invokes a massive military type response. Or, as we remember during the George Floyd protest, there were instigators who had an agenda, and they wanted to foment discontent. So either those two things create an opportunity for the government to say, that's why we're sending troops to lawless Minnesota. And that's what I fear. Can that happen or not?
Yeah, look, we're in a pressure cooker, and the reality of it is, and I went to a breakfast this morning, and I heard the mayor's breakfast, and heard both mayors speaking on this topic a bit. The reality of it is because of this pressure cooker we're in, is that if there's anything that happens, if anything happens to a protester or someone who's in custody, or if anything happens to an ICE agent or anything, and when it comes to that, this whole thing can explode. And we know that because we've seen it before. And so my big fear is that these agents are pushing people so hard right now that sometimes you never know what's going to happen. And just to finish on this, so last weekend, with that right-wing Nazi Jake, I think.
Yep.
Look, and I honestly, as I've watched that video multiple times now, and the fact that it was a black man that saved him, and I honestly believe this, is that if that man was not there, I don't know what would happen to that guy. And let's say he does get assaulted or whatever, that the pressure cooker explodes, right? I mean, it blows up, and that's how close we always are right now, because of the climate that's been created in the streets of Minneapolis and St. Paul and its surrounding suburbs, is that one man protecting that guy probably stopped the National Guard from Alaska landing at our airport and being on these streets. So that's my fear, is that it doesn't take much to tip it over.
Let's end it right there. Corey Day, thank you so much, my friend. Good talking to you.
Always good speaking with you, Al.
Take care. I'm Al McFarland. See you next time. Take care.